It's the summer of 2013, and I'm in my dorm room at NYU. I have some time in between my classes, so I decide to call my mom in New Delhi. We haven't spoken in a while, so I spent most of the call really catching her up on what's been going on in my life, the papers that I've been writing, the internships that I've been applying to. And just as I'm about to get off the call, she says this to me. "Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. Your sister's getting married." I'm sorry, she's getting what? Your sister, she's getting married. So you're gonna have to plan to travel to India next summer. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's fine, but can we just back up a minute? What do you mean she's getting married? Is she dating someone? No, it's an arranged marriage. We found someone for her. So now at this point in the conversation, I had some questions. Because you see, while I come from the land that has birthed the hit Netflix TV show, Indian Matchmaking, I hadn't actually known anyone who'd gotten an arranged marriage. Fuck. I hadn't actually known anyone who had gotten an arranged marriage. And so I had a lot of questions, and my mom patiently answered those questions, and this is what I learned. So if you're in India and you want to get an arranged marriage, this is roughly the three-step process that you would follow. Step number one would begin with the search. So this is traditionally led by your family. They could choose to go the digital route and set up a profile for you on shadi.com, or they could use the most powerful dating app known to man, which is the auntie. Now, if you haven't grown up in India, an auntie is literally any woman over the age of 40. She's most commonly found in her natural habitat, which is a tacky living room, where she is force-feeding you food while simultaneously implying that you could lose a bit of weight. But what really sets the auntie apart is her superior matchmaking skills. You see, if there is an eligible single within an 8-kilometer radius, an auntie is going to know about them, and she's most likely going to try to hook you up. Now, once a suitable bachelor has been procured via the auntie, you move on to step number 2, which is the background check. Now, you can't just marry anyone, and a thorough background check will yield your financial history, someone's professional and educational background, whether you have friends and family in common. And once you pass that, you move on to step number 3, and this is the most important one. It's the horoscope. Now, if you're Hindu, you do not fuck around with astrology. I mean, it is deeply ingrained in our culture. From the point that, from the moment we're born, we have our horoscopes made out for us, and we consult it at important moments in our lives. And so, if two people are to get married, they have to absolutely be astrologically compatible. Now, I know that some of this, probably all of it, sounds batshit crazy, but if there is one part of the process that I really got, it was astrological compatibility. And that, it's because, as I'm sure you can probably tell by the way the news was delivered to me, my sister and I weren't very close. And I had, for many years, attributed our challenging relationship to the fact that I'm a Leo and she's an Aquarius. So on top of our 9-year age gap and the fact that we're completely different people, we're water and fire signs. Some might even say that we were destined to not get along. And so even though I almost never knew what was going on in her life or why she did whatever she chose to do, I was still surprised that she was making this choice, because we came from a family where everyone, from our parents to our grandparents, had dated their partners before getting married. But if I were to put myself in her shoes, I guess I got it. At the time, I was living in New York, I was dating a lot, and shocker, it was terrible, and I was meeting a lot of weirdos, and the only thing that made it bearable was just me pretending that I was living one episode of Sex and the City after another. And so, in my moments of loneliness, I would think about the concept of an arranged marriage and how it could potentially solve the issues of dating. Because you see, in an arranged marriage context, there's no games, there's no ambiguity, there's no situation in which you've been dating a guy for months and then out of the blue he dumps you because he's emotionally unavailable or considering polyamory. Yeah. That doesn't happen. And as my mom had told me that my sister had met this guy, they'd really gotten along, they'd spent hours together, he had made her laugh, and unlike all the guys that I'd been going on dates with at the time, he didn't ghost her after the first date. In fact, on the second date, he asked for her ring size. And so, while I, logically understood, it was still hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that she was choosing to commit to a total stranger. But as my mom reassured me, it was okay because her fiance had passed the 3-point verification system of arranged marriages with flying colors. This is a system that works for thousands of people in India, so everything was gonna be fine. So I got this news, and well, that was it. My sister and I didn't have a relationship before, and a wedding in the family wasn't going to change that. And so a year before the wedding, we spoke a handful of times, once for me to congratulate her, another time for me to meet her fiance over Skype. Both conversations were extremely awkward, in case you were wondering. And for the rest of the year, I was politely exempt from any sort of wedding planning. And so when the time came and I got on that plane to India, I didn't really know how to feel. Because you see, I didn't have the opportunity to really get invested in that relationship. I hadn't seen it evolve. I hadn't even gone to her bachelorette party or helped her pick out a dress. And because this was an arranged marriage, there had been no buildup. It wasn't like, these are two people who've been dating for a while and it kind of culminates in that, lovely and shocking Instagram post of like a ring with the caption, he finally proposed, and I said yes. There was none of that. And so it felt like I was watching the last 15 minutes of a movie and I was just one of the extras. Anyway, I land in India just a couple of days before the wedding, and things are quite hectic as expected, and so I didn't get much of a chance to hang out with my sister or her fiance. But the night before the wedding, our family threw this huge reception party. We had like about 200 people there. There was tons of food, like Bollywood music. Everybody was dancing, having a good time. And right around midnight, with the festivities still going strong, my sister's fiance finally made his way towards me. He approached me and he stood really close. So close that I could smell the liquor on his breath. And I got that feeling you get, when you're walking home alone at night and you can feel like there's someone behind you. And then he got closer and closer until he was leaning in and he whispered in my ear, "Hey, do you think I should marry your sister?" And everything just slowed down. The noise, the people, and I stood there frozen in spot, every fiber of my being deeply uncomfortable, thinking, is this guy's idea of a fucking joke? Does he know who I am? And then it struck me, he didn't know me, not really, but more importantly, I didn't know him. I didn't know the only guy who was gonna marry my only sister, and all that I wanted to do in that moment was run up to her and tell her that she was making a mistake and it was still time to call it off and she could meet someone new and we could plan another wedding and this time I could be a part of it. But as I was thinking all of this, I see her across the room and her face is shining. She's laughing, she's dancing, and when she catches my eye, she gives me this huge smile. And I think to myself, no one this happy can be wrong. No one this happy can be wrong. And plus, people say tons of weird shit before a wedding. So, it's normal, right, I guess? And so I smiled at her, didn't say anything to him or anyone else, as a matter of fact. Didn't seem like it was my place. And I walked away. So my sister was married for 4 years, but the more accurate description is that she was getting divorced for 4 years. The chaos that descended on her life wasn't gradual. It was sudden and then constant. The year before her wedding, her fiance had been the perfect partner, but after he changed almost overnight. or I guess he just stopped pretending. His drinking only got worse. He was an alcoholic, and they fought constantly, and with the drinking came the abuse, which was emotional and sometimes even physical. But eventually, she was able to get out of it, and she even moved to Australia to start a new life. And throughout all of this, just like her wedding, I wasn't there for her, because while she was going through her divorce, I was going through a separation of my own. My immigration in New York had not worked out. I was getting deported. And there was so much going on in both of our lives that we didn't even have the bandwidth to talk, let alone provide each other with any sort of emotional support. But after she had moved to Australia and I had moved to Montreal, she heard a recording of the first story that I ever did at Confabulation. And it had been a painful story. I had talked about how badly I had been bullied and how alone I had felt growing up. And when she heard that story, she called me one night, crying, upset that she had no idea that all of this had been going on in her life, and so sorry that she wasn't around to protect me from it. And I realized that she was feeling the same guilt that I had been carrying for years for not having been there during her divorce. In that moment, we were still completely different people, but somehow now, our lives looked similar. We were both single, living alone, away from our families, trying to make a life in a new country. And it was the shared context that allowed us to really see each other, and see each other for not only who we used to be, but who we were becoming. That night, when she called, we were able to comfort each other, and we were able to recognize and make space for the pain that we had both individually experienced at different points in our lives. That night, we talked, really talked for the first time. And it gives me so much joy to tell you that we've never stopped talking since then. Thank you.